Satoru freaking Gojo is not dead. I have the biggest dose of copium for Gojo fans, as his death has left many in shock. The fans in Japan even gave Gojo a memorial. But we are here to tell you, he may still be alive. What seals the deal is that we also have to remember that Yuji's first death is literally having him dead with no heart after Sukuna ripped it out, and yet he was brought back. The way Sukuna did this was by securing Yuji's soul into his innate domain. Hours or even a day later, he was able to use RCT and bring his heart back, and then placed his soul into his body. Both Gojo and Shoko observed the miracle revival, so to reapply this technique is a great possibility, especially with Yuji's new soul swap technique. Gojo is also just as talented as Sukuna, so he would be able to copy any technique if he put all his concentration into it, just like he did to learn reverse curse technique in the first place. Maki also experienced a moment where her soul converged in with Mai's innate domain before she sacrificed herself. So the method of revival is all here, and this brings us back to why this thematically fits into Gojo's story arc. In chapter 74, Gojo claims that he gave up on fighting and instead focused everything onto RCT, something he was never able to do before. But right on the verge of death, he understood the core of curse energy. However, since we have established the soul and body are linked together, Gojo should be able to learn the idea of maintaining his soul, as Sukuna himself learned from Kenjaku to become immortal via splitting his 20-fold cursed objects. Even Mahito would heal himself via changing the shape of his soul, which Itadori can see the contours of and damages his opponents via the soul. Gojo going north should be able to. Let's establish how this can be possible. After all, his body has been sliced into two. In chapter 37, we learn that curse energy is made in the gut before it can circulate throughout the body. However, to heal themselves, they need to use reverse curse technique and produce positive energy from the negative. This process, as explained in chapter 188, happens in the brain. Gojo is so efficient in using RCT that his brain is always actively producing positive energy and is fresh at all times. Hence, how Gojo was able to quickly heal himself against Sukuna's domain expansion, even though it was cutting him several hundred times a second. A piece of evidence is Hakairi's fight with Kashimo. Hakairi achieved unlimited RCT, which made him immortal. However, Kashimo states that even though energy comes from the gut, you use your head to direct RCT. Therefore, he tries to aim for Hakairi's head to get rid of his immortal status. We clearly see Gojo's head is intact. And right before Gojo was sliced up, in chapter 235, Kusakabe pointed out how the consecutive use of Black Flash regained Gojo's output for RCT, which will help him heal rapidly due to the already accumulated positive energy. This is actually a very important point, as any good writer would follow the narrative principle of Chekhov's gun, which is that one must never place a loaded rifle on stage if it isn't going to go off. It's wrong to make promises you don't mean to keep to readers. This means Kusakabe's statement has to hold some meaning, otherwise, Gege trolled us with copium. But can Gojo even heal from a space-time fabric cleave from Sukuna? Well, yes, he can, as shown in chapter 234, when Mahoraga for the first time adapted this cleave and sliced Gojo's right arm off. Not too long after, Gojo RCT'd back to normal. Not to mention, in his fight against Toji, he stated the reason he came back alive is because he did not aim for the head. It was still intact for him to learn RCT at that very moment. But for the sake of arguments, let's say Gojo doesn't have enough energy to heal his entire bottom half, especially since his shirt is the strongest in the whole verse and he would be naked. Gege doesn't want to please the fat girls.
Pause.
So this brings us to another plot device of how Gojo can be brought back. Shoko and Yuta. These two are the only ones capable of applying RCT to heal few others. And they aren't too far away, especially since Hakairi and Kashimo joined the fight within a few seconds. And Meimei's brother, Ui also... I can't pronounce his name, and he's a weirdo. I don't know. But anyways, he has the ability to teleport. Therefore, it's not an impossible task to get Gojo and heal him. Yuta even saved Yuji Itadori from his second death. He was ordered via binding vow to kill him, and so he did, informing Naoya Zenin of his contract being fulfilled in chapter 143. However, after Yuji's heart stopped, Yuta RCT'd him back to life. Sukuna even reacted in chapter 141, but knew what Yuta had done and didn't interfere. Likewise, Shoko is pretty much a certified jujutsu doctor at this point. Furthermore, the idea of souls traveling in the afterlife to their destination is displayed in chapter 236. Gege purposefully uses Nanami's character to create an analogy on the direction one can take after their death. He brings up Meimei's recommendation on where to migrate. If you want to become a new version of yourself, go north. Nanami confirms that this whole interaction is not a dream or hallucination. He reveals to Gojo of his own final moments, where he was confronted by Haibara's spirit as we saw in chapter 120. Plus, the idea of his retirement was to move to Malaysia, which is the south of Japan, which completely checks the boxes. Nanami's final moments are obviously not possible to generate with Gojo's own memories of his friends. So the concept of the soul living in another world might go further to explain how the dead can interact with the living, and how Geto's body managed to choke Kenjaku out in the Shibuya incident. But Nanami not only reveals that there is life after death, but also gives the copium we all need. Gojo is not dead. When questioned about his death, Nanami explained to Gojo on how there are curses that can help a person live, which is like a burden left upon the shoulder of those alive, giving them no choice but to continue. Take a look at Nanami's death. He sees Haibara after questioning why he became a sorcerer again instead of retiring. That's when he points at Yuji, making Nanami realize Itadori is the future of sorcerers and the reason he can bet on it. His love and strong will to save the day will prevail eventually. However, Nanami tells Haibara he cannot let Yuji know these feelings and that he is betting on him because that would be a burden to him and be his curse. But he still goes ahead and tells Yuji, "You got it from here." This allows Nanami to move on and die peacefully with no regrets, knowing he left things in good hands. This is when Gojo confirms the newfound knowledge and makes fun of Yaga that he stated sorcerers die with regrets. But Nanami over here, he didn't, and he's content. Likewise, Jujutsu also works in the same way, by giving the student no choice but to persevere. Nanami, after he died, chose south without hesitation, giving his reason that a pessimist like him in his final moments had to bet on the future. However, Jujutsu Kaisen has pointed out multiple times, Gojo is the polar opposite of Nanami, which is why he believes that Gojo outlived him. In the end, Gojo's interaction with his dead friends come to an end, as he wishes that his reunion with them and the experience he is living is real. This sentiment showcases that Gojo is about to make a decision, which he might regret if he doesn't end up back here in the afterlife with Geto and his friends. This decision is to go north, following Nanami's analogy to become a new version of himself before actually dying. Gojo even admits that he used Jujutsu as a means to satisfy himself. So this is the rebirth for Gojo to now live to protect, as someone who is humbled again with a new perspective. He failed every single goal he had in life, but with a second awakening, he will achieve them. Furthermore, we all know Jujutsu Kaisen has made many references to Gojo being like Buddha. His quote of heaven and earth is directly from him. This quote originates from Lotus Sutra, one of the most influential and venerated. Notice I said lotus flowers, but I'll get to that in a second, because it's not only the quote that Gojo uses. He also utilized Buddha's pose of pointing his fingers north and south, just like him in chapter 74, whilst quoting, "Throughout the heavens and earth, I alone am the honored one." When Buddha was born, he took 7 steps from his mother and pointed to the sky and the earth to say the same thing. But what's crazy is that their similarities don't end there, because Gojo's supposed death took place a day before his 29th birthday. Yep. Even though his birthday took place on December 7th, he had lost 18 days due to being sealed in the timeless prison realm. His physical time on Earth is 29 years only after a day from his fight with Sukuna. This age is important because Buddha at 29 himself started his journey to enlightenment, reaching nirvana to be reborn. Gojo's whole character is about awakening and enlightenment. From him being born with the 6 eyes and limitless, he awakened the world into a new era, to even himself, with his name Satoru being derived from Satori, which means to know or to experience awakening. To further prove Gojo's rebirth, we also see imagery of lotuses, and in Buddhism, these flowers represent purity, spiritual awakening, and faithfulness, which in Gojo's case is to his students. So since the lotuses symbolize the rebirth of the soul, and Gojo finally losing, stripping him of the title of strongest, his ego is now destroyed. He has been humbled, which brings him an opportunity to come back, which again relates back to Buddha, as when he was a baby, he took 7 steps north, and with each step a lotus flower appeared on the ground. However, Buddha only attained the title and enlightenment after he fasted, and then finally broke the fast by eating. In the same way, Gojo eating this L from Sukuna is the key to his real enlightenment. In our last video, we explained that Gojo lacks the correct sense of self. He may understand the core of curse energy, but not the purpose of how it should be wielded to live up to his title of strongest. Much like Mahito against Yuji, he finally understood the core of his soul to finally get his true form. Sukuna has done the same, and now it's the turn for Gojo. In Buddhism, our sense of self is an illusion created by our thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. Everything in the world, including ourselves, is in a constant state of change and impermanence. In essence, the Buddhist concept of the sense of self encourages us to let go of our ego and the illusion of a permanent self, leading to a deeper understanding of reality and a path to inner peace that Gojo desires, as his ultimate downfall was his loneliness and the aspect of thinking about getting satisfaction from Sukuna, which he now understands was wrong. What he actually wanted was inner peace with his friends and being with his loved ones. Nirvana is liberation from the cycle of dukkha, which is being in the state of dissatisfaction of life. This is one of the conditions of enlightenment. So, if Gojo himself is admitting he is suffering from an existential crisis, how could his story arc be complete, as he never achieved it? When you take a look at chapter 37, when the concept of curse energy is being explained, it follows the Buddhist principles, which is we exist in this world with our entire body, mind, and soul. But most people have taken that maxim for granted. Gojo had never killed his ego. He determines his existence through his strength, which is why he proceeded to call Jogo weak, for example. He goes out of his way to declare Sukuna the challenger with 200% purple, highlighting what? His ego. Throughout the fight, he makes fun out of Sukuna and even states he's going to show off because my students are watching. Even against Toji, he wasn't fighting for Riko Amanai, but himself. Therefore, Gojo let his title define his existence, falsely believing there was a line between himself and others he loved. The truth is, childhood friends like Shoko stated they were always there for him, but Gojo chose to not let them help. Funnily enough, Gojo's story is also a playback to Indra from the Hindu mythology, where he too was defeated by Asura and came back to life with his ego depleted. completed. The parallel between Gojo and Indra is shown at us with his hand seals and mudra for his domain expansion. It's exactly the same. This gives another foreshadowing that Gojo will come back to life just like the mythology that Gege has based his story on. Now, to enjoy more peak fiction, why not understand Gojo's loneliness in the first place and what was his biggest mistake that made him lose against Sukuna?